My girlfriend, who was married to an alcoholic farmer, her counselor said, what about redemptive separation? So she separated from her husband for 3 years and was very clear, I'll be back when you've gone to AA, when you become sober, and when you're then rational to start a transition plan with our sons. And this all happened, and they had a great marriage after 3 years when she came back, because there was never an intention to divorce, but there was an intention to see a change in behavior. And so, Andrew, that's another part, I think, of the happy story part of what separation can do. It can be a huge wake-up call to say, things are not good on this farm, on the relationship side. Things are not good on how we do the finances side. So let's bring somebody who can hold those things in two places at the same time and help you navigate what you're going to look like to go forward. A mediator is a neutral third party, an objective listener, and in conflict resolution, where I was trained, it's like being the pigeon on the balcony of this farm couple and saying, wow, that's interesting. Wow, that's interesting. What were you intending by doing that? And you're actually holding a safe space respectfully to let both of them feel seen and heard at the same time. Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Fraze, Farm Family Coach, here with another episode full of transition tips, tactics, and sometimes hard truths to get harmony on your farm. Hey there, farm families and friends. It's Elaine Fraze, Farm Family Coach, coming to you again with another issue of the Farm Family Harmony podcast. And today I have the pleasure of introducing you to my longtime friend, Andrew DeRuyck. Andrew and I have a bit of a history together. We both have done farm debt mediation for the Farm Debt Mediation Service. And typically I would be a mediator. Andrew is also a mediator, but he also has another special skill that I want to shine the flashlight on today. Andrew is a very, very good farm management specialist. And in those days, we used to call him the field person or the recovery plan maker. So Andrew, tell us your story. You're farming, and what else are you doing these days?
Yeah. So I guess my story is I started working after university for FCC and the financial companies and stuff like that. Started farming, and I think it was 2001 full time. And then we were in all cattle at that point. BSE hit, and I started an off-farm business. Got contracts with Farm Debt Mediation Service and Manitoba Farm Mediation Board at that time. And then I started doing private consulting as well too. And so since then, we've exited out of cattle ourselves after about 5 years. We exited out of cattle, and now we're straight grain. Grew the farm. We're probably 2,700 acres now, and my kids and wife are a big help on the farm as well too. And so I'm still doing mediation. Have branched more from farm debt mediation into farm divorces. I've done a number of them as well too, and had good success with them, and do get a lot of referrals for them. And then I still do the financial consulting as well too, just looking at balance sheets and cash flows and doing projections for farms and looking at different scenarios and comparing one scenario versus another for a farmer and putting together an action plan and helping them drive forward and make decisions that are actually going to make a difference in their operation.
So drive forward and actually make a difference. There's the key phrase, folks. So Andrew walks the talk because he's an actual farmer. And when he looks at numbers, he can see when things don't actually line up on paper that need a little more detail. So Andrew, you and I don't talk to each other every year. And so the last time I talked to you, because I was referring you to a family that I thought you could really help with the numbers side and figuring out what was really truly going on in profitability and all those good things. That's when you mentioned that, oh, Elaine, by the way, I'm now working with farm divorce, and my ears perked up. And so I've called this episode A New Way to Help Farm Divorce. And so it's a reality, Andrew. I tried to do some research. There's no way we can tell how many farm families get divorced every year in Canada. But I can tell you that every farm that touches our farm here in southwestern Manitoba is divorced. So I have lived experience watching my neighbors get divorced, and also lived experience with farm families that I've coached over the years who are going through divorce. So tell us what's unique to how you can help farm families. The way you described it to me the first time we talked about this was getting people ready for their lawyer with their farm assets. So tell us what you
Mm,
do that's different, and I think life changing, because it makes common sense to have two adults who are farm couple coming to you wanting to get a divorce, but they don't want to rack up the legal bill. So tell us your process. What does this look like?
right. Well, the first divorce that I did, Elaine, or one of the first ones, I guess, um, I've realized that it's a very unique skill set, and not all lawyers out there are familiar, uh,
Right.
integrally familiar with farm situations. When somebody says they have 10,000 acres or 1,000 acres, and they had 500 cows versus 5 cows, there wasn't that
Understanding.
individual knowledge that they knew what a cow even was and what it meant to calve out 500 cows actually meant.
Yeah.
Um, so that was kind of an eye opener. And there's just a lot. When I say preparing for a divorce, I mean, I read your title and I was like, oh gosh, there isn't really a great way to prepare for divorce. I mean, I'm not advocating that. Because we can't change the laws of, the
Of the
separation
land.
laws in the
Hmm.
land, right? I mean, and the separation laws also, Elaine, they weren't built for farms.
No.
And there's a, we're in a unique industry where, you get terms like sweat equity and that kind of stuff built in. There's no sweat equity in the separation
Or
laws. And
delayed compensation, which they like to call it now.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Hmm.
that's just, those things aren't in there. So anyway, I mean, back to my, one of the first ones that I had, they had a team of, 3 or 4 lawyers on each side. And, they had spent significant dollars.
More than
It was a
five
lot of,
figures, Andrew?
pardon me?
More than five figures already before
Oh,
they
yeah.
found you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. And, they, I looked at it and they were meeting kind of once a month, maybe once every 2 months type thing, because to get the schedules organized for all of these lawyers or whatever, I can just imagine it was impossible. It's tough enough to get,
One
often
lawyer.
things organized for a couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, they were really struggling, and I think part of it, I realized too, that not all the lawyers had the understanding,
That they needed to.
maybe that of just what it all entailed. They were running a business together, even though they were separated,
Mhm.
um, and so it had gone on for some time. They had agreed to separate and divorce, but they wanted to keep the farm intact, and so the husband was doing custom work, for the other party, and just disagreements naturally happen. I mean, it's a stressed relationship right from the beginning. And
And the fact that you're a mediator, how did you click in with your mediation skills? Explain to people what true mediation looks like, Andrew, because 'cause you're not
mm,
taking sides.
no, no, so yeah, no, and I didn't take sides. I mean, the real thing was, the biggest thing was listening. Had to listen to both sides of it. And I realized very quickly in that situation, one side truly felt like they weren't being heard, and that just escalated things, um, because the volume would go up immediately, and the yelling and the shouting, and it all stemmed from that. She wasn't, it wasn't being heard. So I mean, taking the time to listen what had to be said on both parties' side is absolutely critical.
Yes.
Um, and just letting them talk until they've talked out, and then finally, once they could feel heard, then we could have a discussion. And
Mhm.
and then both sides, actually, I found, were very reasonable in the end. But until they felt that, the unreasonableness came from the rushing and trying to get through it too quickly, and that they just the non-listening. So that was probably the biggest breakthrough that I've had, you know, with and why I had success. I think where the other parties didn't is that when you got three lawyers sitting around and they're charging, significant
$700 an
dollars.
hour. Yep.
Yeah, they're I don't think anybody felt there was the time to just listen and slow down. And sometimes to speed things up, you need to slow down. Um, and so
Right.
that was probably the first thing, listening and getting that out. Once I did that, then we could start having discussions about, intent, action, and effect, what the each party was intending to do, why they did a certain action, and then looking at that action and what did the effect have on the other side.
Let's
And
just put a sticky note on that right now, Andrew, because that's classic conflict language. And
mhm,
anyone who's heard me speak or goes online to the other videos in this series will see intent is what's in your mind. So right now, we have no idea what people are thinking until they speak or until they act. And then they have no idea what effect that has on us until we kind of loop it back to them. So folks, just write that down. Intent, action, effect. And intent you can write a cloud around, action you can put on the other side of the page, but effect you can also write a cloud around because it's something that's unseen or not understood until it's spoken and like you said, listened to, and then the person actually feels seen and heard. So, Andrew, did the couple then more defer to you as the lead in the divorce process then once they figured out that you were the one who actually understood what was going on?
mhm. Yeah, so once that happened, they both once they I spent the time with them, listening to them and finding out what they had, um, and going back and forth a couple times at a couple meetings, then they realized, yeah, I was probably the one person in this who understood both sides, or they both felt understood by me. Yeah.
Right.
And so not and like I say, not in a in a biased way, but I just had listened to each other, or listened to them both,
Well,
and the
I think that's
farming
what
background. Sorry.
sorry, I think that's what listeners also need to understand about the nature or the root of mediation. A mediator is a neutral third party, an objective listener, and in conflict resolution, where I was trained, it's like being the
Mhm,
pigeon on the balcony of this farm couple, and saying, "Wow, that's interesting. Wow, that's interesting. What were you intending by doing that?" And you're actually holding a safe space respectfully to let both of them feel seen and heard at the same time. And when the voices get loud, as you mentioned they do, you say, can we just, calm this down a bit? Let's stay respectful. What is it you're trying to get across? Can you say it in a different way?
mhm.
So, Andrew, why did the people you think rush into getting three lawyers right at the get go? Like, why would they do that? Is that because that's what they think you do when you get a separation and divorce on the farm because so much is at stake? Well, then I better lawyer up. Like, why do you think people do that first instead of doing facilitated conversation, mediation, the skills that you have on top of being a farm management specialist?
Hmm. I think part of it's awareness. They didn't know there was
Okay.
another option. You get divorced, then I think you think, well, who do you talk to first? You got to talk to a lawyer or whatever.
Okay.
And like I say, I'm not trying to run down the legal side of it. It's
No,
it's a necessity. It's very, it's a,
complicated.
but it is a very confrontational method of
Adversarial
getting
somewhat. Yeah.
adversarial. Yeah, that's the word. Yeah.
Adversarial
So
kind of system or process.
yeah, and it
Okay.
was
Okay.
just their
So,
first natural reaction.
right. And so I also have had recent experience with a couple separating from a farm. And this is kind of how I found you again in the work that you're now doing. But I also brought in another mediation friend who works with a company out of Brandon and bankruptcy trustee. And you have much familiarity as well with bankruptcy because of your mediation,
Mhm,
farm debt mediation experience. And it was very helpful to have them as well, especially zoning in on the financial data. So Andrew, that's your skill. You've
mhm,
worked for Farm Credit Canada in your early days. I remember I think your dad had an altercation with a cow at one time when I knew you, and so I'm not surprised the cows are gone. But anyway, you're I don't know if you remember that, but that was not good when
Well,
your dad got hurt.
yeah.
And so things evolve and things change. So now we're sitting here in 2026. There's between 40 to 60,000 divorces in Canada a year. It went down during the big pause in 2020 around to stats I saw were 42,000. But there's no way of knowing how many farm families are going through divorce because it's not attributed to the stats by occupation or farm status. And also, we have a lot of farm families now that don't bother getting married. They just cohabitate, which is a whole other thing. And I'll just put a shout out there, folks. If you've been cohabitating for more than a couple of years and you have a child that you've born together, then you are technically married under the eyes of the law. So there's a lot of things that people as farmers need to understand. So talk more about what you did next. Once you got the couple to understand that they were seen and heard, the
Mhm.
lawyers are now not being called every month because first we got to figure out the financial stuff. Because I always say finances are data. Money is data. Cash flow, all those lovely spreadsheets that you're gifted at making. You're the recovery plan guy, Andrew. So what do you actually show the couple through that plan?
Right. So, what I always do is, um, organize if it's just organizing their information in a way that makes sense, and
To them?
probably that's, what because some of it is the experience, Elaine, of having done this for 25 years and stuff,
Mhm.
being able to take complex problems, and that's often what farms have become is complex
Highly
problems,
complex businesses, yep.
businesses, and organizing them in a way that you can drill down, giving the clients the information that they need in a format they can understand so that they can make decisions to affect change. Without that, I mean, 20 years ago, farms were a lot smaller. They were less complex. The tax rules were less. We were dealing with $1,000 an acre land, not $10,000
Yes.
an acre land. The margins were larger than they were probably now. Um, in terms of the finance, a large loan back then was, $1 million. I mean,
Yeah.
when I started financing, I did one of the largest loans in Manitoba, and it was $1 million, and it was like, holy smokes! And
Whoa.
how a
Two
large
thou
loan, you know, a medium loan is probably $7 to $10 million. A
Yeah,
million
that
dollars.
sounds like a new barn to me, $5,000,000 out the door right there, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, as those finances have gotten more complex and large, you know, our us as farmers in the agriculture community, our financial prowess or experience or education hasn't grown with that. I mean, there are
Your
very few of
financial
us. I mean,
literacy, Andrew?
financial
Your ability
literacy,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah. And, it hasn't grown with that. And that's probably one of the challenges. And so, when you add a level of divorce on there on top of that, where you've got relationship stress, it gets really tough to talk about and have those conversations. So
So I
immediately
don't
what I
wanna
do, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, I just wanted to catch that thought while you had it, is the financial literacy is not growing with the complexity of agriculture. That's kind of how I'll paraphrase it.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, I'm not a very smart farmer. I'm actually quite humiliated to try and talk to you because I don't understand my finances very well. So I just kind of stuck my head in the ground and hoped it all worked out. And
Hmm.
now I'm in the middle of having my spouse ask for a separation. And I'm really angry about that because I intended to stay married forever, but that's apparently not what's happening. So how do you ease or how do you comfort this couple who, like you say, has the relationship stress of, I don't want to be married to you anymore. So that's in the family circle. But they
Hmm.
also are business partners and have signed all kinds of guarantees together and own a bunch of land, equipment, and inventory and infrastructure together. How do
Hmm.
you how do you take them where they're at with their financial unawareness or illiteracy, whatever you want to call it? And how do you say, we're going to do this, we're going to organize this, and we're going to make it so you understand. How do you get them to that place of not being ashamed or humiliated about what they don't actually know about their own business?
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good comment, Elaine, because quite honestly, I don't think there is any shame in it because we're all in the same boat. I mean, the entire
We're all
agriculture
struggling.
community, even the guys who, even myself, you know, wake up some mornings and stuff goes through your mind and everything like that about, oh, is this going to work? Is that going to work?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, how I deal with it personally is I go to the computer and, I look at the balance sheet and I look at the cash flow and yeah, and you have to get comfortable with it. And I go back to 20 years ago when I was in BSE and had quit my job. That was probably the scariest time in
A
my
perfect
life.
storm, right? You had a perfect
Perfect
storm. You left a
storm,
really good
exactly.
paying job and you got whacked by BSC.
Yeah, yeah. And how I got through it, I mean, for me to, for me, how I got through it was understanding the numbers,
Yes.
going back to those numbers, realizing where your financial security comes from is probably one of the most important things. For me, it was having the pen of fat steers behind the house or whatever. Didn't matter if they were worth $100 a piece or $1,000 a piece or $5,000 a piece. They were, that was more, gave me more financial security than a bank account.
Well, we used to
And
call those a bank on four legs. Don't you remember that?
yeah, yeah. And
When we worked in mediation, we called those walking animals in good shape a bank on
yep.
four legs. Like that's what those cows were.
And
And
that
now, of course,
honestly,
yeah, yeah.
it
So not
comes
only
from a
is
different place for different people,
yeah,
and
but you got
under,
security or you got assurance by looking at the data because you understood what it was telling you.
yeah, I had to get past that, past that, knowing that was my tendency or my feeling, and had to go to the numbers, to the cash flow, educate myself on where I was, what was my fear. If I was worried that I wasn't going to have cash in September, well, you got to look at your cash flow, not look at how big the steers are. I mean,
Yeah.
because there's too many factors. You've got to, there in the old days, where there wasn't as many factors of,
Or
you
complexities, as
just
you
had to
said
have enough
before.
barley in the bin to get those steers fat and you could sell them. Dad never had, my dad never had a lot of debt and wasn't using a lot of financing. And so he didn't have to factor in the monthly payments and the quarterly payments and such forth. But
So let's get back to this couple. I'm still curious about them because now they've looked at the numbers with you. They're starting to understand what she owns, what he owns, what they own jointly. Then what
Mhm.
happens?
So drilling down, that's the listening part, back to the listening, finding out, okay, specifically, I'm hearing you that you're upset, that this farming arrangement that you have isn't working and you figure your spouse is, taking advantage of you somehow. What specifically are we worried about? Well, the fuel in the tank, it was the diesel in the tank. That's my tank. And I seen him filling up one time. Well, we got to get down to what are specific things that are
Or
upsetting, and then
triggers,
we
yeah.
need to hear the up from the other side. Let's deal with them one on one. So we have to
Mhm.
drill down. And sometimes it's a list of 5 things, sometimes it's a list of 25 things, but we have to go one by one dealing with them. Okay, did you realize when you fill up out of her tank, that's upsetting to her and that's creating a distrust. And then, it's figuring out, and going through what are the list of things that are a problem, getting the finances organized and the budgets organized the way it's supposed to work, and then showing why it hasn't worked in the past. What are we going to change? Right?
So I'm also seeing a parallel from what you're speaking, Andrew, to some families I've coached over the years who are not married to each other. They're siblings of a sister and a brother or two brothers farming together. They're just ticking each other off on a constant basis. And it's always a lightning rod effect in a family meeting, which I just had this week when an assumption was being made about something that the brother was doing. And he said, no, you misunderstood. I was not in the room when mom and dad were doing their will. I just drove them to the lawyer. Oh, I thought you had part of no, that's not true. So, you're breaking down a lot of assumptions. You're also doing conflict resolution because you're seeing where all the pinch points or irritations are. But I'm curious, Andrew, I can just imagine people listening and saying, "Elaine, we do wanna get a divorce. We're not gonna be married to each other anymore, but we don't want the farm to suffer or be split up." Like, that is a tall order, Andrew. What do you do? Because that couple you said, each had things happen in the operation, but they wanted to keep the farm intact. So then what happened?
So, yeah, I mean, keeping the farm intact is we got to look at it. First of all, is it a realistic goal?
Okay.
And
Is that
are they
workable and doable?
willing? Yep. Are they willing? Are you guys both? Is this both of your goals? You know,
Are you
if
aligned in
it
that?
isn't,
Mhm.
if it isn't both of your goals, then I think we really have to look. Are you one side going to be able to do it by themselves? Yeah,
Or else there's gonna be a huge disconnect or this happening where
that's
those
right.
lawyers are still cranking up the billable hours because you're still at this point rather than trying to create a workable solution.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's where you get into the common ground. How much common ground
Yeah.
is there
What do you
between
both
these?
want?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you
Sometimes
both
it's
want?
children that's the common ground. And so, you have the two position or different positions or whatever, and the common ground is towards the kids, realizing where the common ground is. And when we're talking about the positions that are different and we have to do some compromises or whatever, reminding them about the common ground. Well, yeah, I don't need every last cent out of the farm. If it's going to the kids anyways, I'd be willing to, I'm
And
fine
then
with
and
that.
then, Andrew, how do you start setting those agreements in place? Like a letter of intent, the common ground that we do want this farm to pass to the next generation.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of distress because many people in farms that we coach, there's not a lot of personal wealth and liquidity on the personal side. A lot of the wealth is in the farm assets.
Mhm.
And how are you going to separate and how are you going to satisfy the needs of an income stream for a divorce situation without really harming or affecting the flow of cash in the farm?
Mm. And 9 times out of 10, it is going to affect the cash flow of the farm. It's just whether, it's a farm ending event. Is there enough farm left there? Um, and so, every situation, there isn't a formula that,
No.
yeah, this is gonna work for everybody. It's totally unique. Um, and I guess where I've had success is doing it for 25 years. I've seen so many different things and it's applying
Scenarios.
one situation. Well, I seen, Fred did this. Well, this portion of what Fred did might work in Tommy's situation and John's situation. It's just little pieces from, that what you've been doing is just making suggestions. The making of suggestions doesn't mean that they should do them, but it gets
Well,
the
it's creating
conversation started.
right. It's creating solutions and creating opportunity, which is positive conflict behavior. And let's just review that. Another positive conflict behavior, even while you're going through a divorce, is to be able to express your emotions and leap and loop back what the effect of another person's way they speak to you or way they treat you, how that affects you, and how that makes you shut down, or how that opens you up to creating more possibility. The other
Mhm.
the other thing I'm curious, Andrew, is what do the timelines look like when you start working with a couple? Like you said, the lawyers were meeting once a month, and it was six lawyers that had to be lassoed into one meeting space to make that happen, which is a lot of finagling and a lot of time spent to do that. So how do you make things keep moving forward so that this takes a reasonable amount of time and just doesn't exhaust people in the process?
I that's that's tough because it is going to exhaust people. It is 100% going to exhaust people. But honestly, what it takes is persistence.
And
Um,
determination to keep going?
yep,
Mhm.
determination to keep going. Um, my mom used to say, you don't fail until you quit trying. You
Okay.
know,
So keep
And
trying.
at the end of the day, I mean, these divorces often, very seldom have I done one that's been less than 6 month process, you know?
Well, that to
It's
me seems really reasonable.
oh,
I
that is
I've
really
had
reasonable. Yeah.
I've seen them go on for 7 years, Andrew, and it's just
Yeah.
like that much of emotional anxiety and overwhelm for 7 years is just it's just too much, right?
Absolutely. I agree it's too much. I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't had one go for 7 years because at the end of the day, I push people, we talk about their goals, and then I push people to follow them. You told me that you wanted this done in 6 months. Well, we've got to get back on track here and
And so you have a
reminding the
target and a
charities.
timeline. Yep.
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 Targeting a timeline and holding people's feet to the fire. I mean, often a lot of it is, discussions about morality and stuff like that you get into
Yes.
with people and,
When are
that
you
they want
getting
to
your
bring up.
pastoral degree, Andrew?
Pardon me?
When are you getting your pastoral designation?
Yeah, yeah, I know, I know.
Right, but
Yeah.
again, you're a safe place, right? You are a safe place to land because number 1, you're a farmer, so you understand the culture of agriculture. Number 2, you're a financially literate person because you're a farm management specialist who's really good at taking a lot of complexity in numbers and helping the couple know this is what you need to do and this is what it's going to take to get what you've told me you want.
Mhm,
And then
mhm,
the next thing that you're good at is mediation, because what mediation does is looks at all the problems and says, where are you on common ground? What do you both want? We want the farm to stay intact. We want the farm to be able to go to the next generation. I also want to have a reasonable level of living. So here I am. I'm the spouse, Andrew, and I say, Andrew, I've never lived by myself for like 40 years. It's
mhm,
going to cost me 80 grand a year to live. How am I going to get that?
mhm. Where is it gonna come
And
from?
she wants 80 grand and he wants 120 grand. I don't know what the numbers are. What do you
Mhm.
do when people are not aligned in what's workable?
Right, right.
And you say,
Well,
I can give you 38.5, but I cannot give you 80 grand. You can, 32, 38.5 will come out of this separation agreement or this divorce settlement, but it's not going to be 120 a month grand or
right,
120 grand a year, or whatever.
yeah, and that's where the understanding the numbers is. If you're both going over the same set of numbers where I'm looking at the same set of numbers with the people, yeah, the cash flow is what the cash flow is for the farm. So if somebody needs a certain amount to live off of, or both parties need, those numbers are laid out. If it can't come from the farm, then it has to come from asset
From
sale.
somewhere. Okay.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, if there's 80,000 that's needed, use that example, and 40,000 can come from the farm, something's got to be sold will affect the cash flow of the farm the least, and yet it's going to make up that difference in terms of to meet the requirements for the living, right? And
Yeah.
working through the problem together, you know, is the most effective because at the end of the day, it's not an imposed decision. Everybody's looking at the same numbers. If we're disagreeing on that the cash flow is more than that, okay, well, if the cash flow of the farm is more than that, tell me what price you're expecting. Are we off on the yields? Are we off on the price? It's that deep understanding that, has to eventually come, and that's going to lead them down the right path because we're agreeing upon the yield is this, the price is that, the expenses are that. Well, then the conclusion and the income at the end of the day, the numbers are what the numbers are. And
And the
the
behavior.
people have to be willing to put in the work, right, to get that. And if you take them through step by step and that understanding is along the way, when you get to the end number, there's a lot less conflict that can be had because it's their numbers. It's
Right,
not
and hopefully this whole process with you is also based on trust and honesty, and there's no
absolutely.
secret side deals of $5,000 checks being flipped over or gas being taken from the tank in the middle of night or 3 o'clock in the like you and I have both been around agriculture for decades working with farm families, that
Hmm.
not a lot is gonna shock us in terms of
Hmm.
people's behavior, and when people are angry, they don't think rationally. So
Hmm.
it's really important for those of you listening who are in a relationship that is going sideways and you're considering what life might look like having a divorce or separation. And I have another thought that I'd like to put forward because we are talking about divorce. Is my girlfriend who was married to an alcoholic farmer, her counselor said, what about redemptive separation? So she separated from her husband for 3 years and was very clear, I'll be back when you've gone to AA, when you become sober, and when you're then rational to start a transition plan with our sons. And this all happened, and they had a great marriage after 3 years when she came back, because there was never an intention to divorce, but there was an intention to see a change in behavior. And so, Andrew, that's another part, I think, of the happy story part of what separation can do. It can be a huge wake-up call to say, things are not good on this farm on the relationship side. Things are not good on how we do the finances side. So let's bring somebody who can hold those things in two places at the same time and help you navigate what you're going to look like to go forward. So tell me, how old is the oldest couple you've ever consulted going through a divorce, Andrew?
Yeah, and it was probably mid-50s, early 60s. Often I find, older couples, the situation's more complicated first because we've accumulated more assets, and the longer you go through life, the more assets you accumulate, often the more equity you accumulate. There's just
And
more
debt.
zeros. Yep,
What about the
more debt,
debt?
the whole part of it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that complicates things. We also get more entrenched in, I think, our expectations of each other and, inevitably we all, one of the largest causes of hurt in people's relationships and stuff is let down expectations, right?
Yeah, not
And
meeting each other's expectations.
yep, yep.
Or not
And quite
talking about
honest,
what they might be.
pardon me.
Not talking about what they might be. Don't you read
Yeah.
my mind, Andrew? Come on.
Well, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's scary how we're all wired the same. There's common themes in all of our problems. When you let down somebody, you talk about trust accounts and stuff like that. Um, when those trust accounts get below a certain level, people's feelings get hurt very easily, and it takes a long time to fix that. And the later the divorce is in the life, that trust account, at one point was really large, right? And the depletion of that trust account to get to the point where you're divorcing in your 50s or 60s or whatever is just really painful, you know. I think anyway. I mean, I compare
Well,
it on
and
the
I
side.
yeah, I think it's also
If you had a $1 million bank account and you gambled it all away, well, that's a huge loss. If you had a $10 bank account and you gambled it away, well, you can go back to work and still make that. But
yeah, it
$1 million,
didn't affect your life quite so
in a
much. Yeah.
relationship world, that that bank account at one point was really large because you've just went through so many life experiences together,
Together.
for it to be gone now is just really hurtful. So it
So you use the
sometimes takes
term
more time to work through things, it requires more listening, I find, on the mediator side, giving people more time to tell you their story. They have to get
yes.
that out, that's one of the biggest things I've seen in my mediation is before any repairing can be done, um, there first has to be that admitting of wrongdoing,
Mm,
and that's often what moves things along really quickly, and why some people don't even get divorced is because, the spouse had said, "Oh, I messed up. I messed up. I did this and I did that and I did that, and I'm sorry, but I messed up. It's 100% my fault." Well, that allows, the other person to say, "Oh, they can come out and say, 'I'm mad. It shouldn't have happened. You did it.'" But eventually, you can only say that so many times in so many ways, but they get it out and it's over. Now we can move on. But
or
if you
now you
want
can
to,
make repair,
now
or
you
now
can
you
make
can make
repairs.
things
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But if
if
there's
it's
no
only
admitting of wrongdoing, it can't even begin. It can't begin,
mm,
because it's still ongoing. And
Well,
I equate
behavior
it
hasn't
to,
changed, Andrew. That's why people get divorced. The behavior that of both parties together or whatever is just no longer workable or acceptable to the other party,
yeah,
right? And there may be an intervention, there may be coaching intervention, there may be counseling intervention, there may be your intervention with the
hmm
financial management side. And at some point they say, I haven't seen any change in behavior. Dr. Gary Chapman wrote this really good book called When Sorry Is Not Enough. And some people, words are cheap. They don't mean anything. But what people want to see is a change in behavior, and they also want to see, how are you going to make this right? And there are a lot of strong women in agriculture who, I've had some TikTok videos go pretty crazy because I've said women need to have their names on assets. And there's a whole culture around that too, about whether or not that's a good idea. And in my point of being, when I got married to Wes 45 years ago, everything we built together has our name on it together jointly. The other viral video was interspousal agreements, because people are terrified, Andrew, of who's coming into their family, these new brides, these new son-in-laws. And they're thinking, Elaine, we got a multi-million-dollar farm now. We need to protect this. But what you just said, Andrew, is so important, is what you need to protect is that trust account, which in my terms is your emotional bank account. Are you taking care of the health and cherishment and respect of the marriage relationship of the founders, the successors, the non-farm heirs, and the children? Like, it goes from generation to generation. And
that's
people
right.
are now, I think, reaping the fruit of their bad behavior, so to speak, right? Because
hmm
this next generation of new people coming into agriculture is not going to put up with bad behavior for very long. And so that's why I asked you, what are the ages and ranges of the people you work with? Because I'm also working with the 40-year-olds who, have raised families, but at 40, they want to be recognized for their contribution, and they want to be seen and heard, and they want to be respected, and they want to be validated, and they don't want to depend on the future wills and estates plan for their own economic well-being, because they don't feel financially safe.
hmm
And that's where daughter-in-laws get really concerned. And I have a case right now, which is highly unfortunate, but the son has a huge medical issue. And the fear is, Elaine, if he dies on that surgery table, what happens to me? And folks, if you're listening to this and you have a daughter-in-law who's become distant or doesn't seem to speak very much, approach her with a nice cup of coffee and a sense of curiosity and say, I'm just curious, are you okay? And what is it that you need to know from us, or how do we need to support you to have a better experience being part of this farm dynamic? Because Farming's In-Law Factor, the book I wrote, does address the fact that the people who come into these farming situations have different ways of doing conflict, Andrew. And there are a lot of women who are really smart with financial literacy, but their skill sets are being ignored. And so they don't feel seen and heard either, right? So on this happy note of talking about divorce, what's the one thing you want to leave our listeners with? That they, if in a lot of marriages, it's always, some people say, don't even start mentioning the word divorce. Because once you've said the word, oh, I'm just going to divorce you, you've planted a seed that might go bad. So however people want to navigate their feelings of frustration of not having their needs met, what's the first thing a couple who's having relationship stress, what can you do for them with your skill set of the mediator and of the farm management specialist, Andrew? How can you help them get back on the right path?
hmm
Do you do discovery calls? Do you help sort of skim the water and see what the big overall picture looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I think getting back on the right path, when I have that conversation with people that are in trouble is it's common ground.
Okay.
That's the key.
Seeking common ground.
Seeking common ground. Remember, going back to the basics. Why did you guys get married? You know,
Mhm.
Why did you get married? You know, I think about with me and my wife, we've been true partners. I've been so fortunate to be married to Tanis and that she's been, my life partner in every way, in my business as well too. I mean, if we'd ever get separated or divorced, I wouldn't really have any question that it's half hers because she literally, and I pushed her or whatever. She hasn't been a
Yeah.
doll sitting on a shelf, not being my partner. I mean,
Mm.
my success is her success and vice versa.
And it's
And I
shared.
think it's shared, and that's the common ground. I mean, we've had so many discussions about our goals and our life and our family and what we're gonna. This is ours. So that's where it's that. If whenever you feel like you're going off track, you have to go back to the common ground. Why did we get married in the first place, and why are we deviating from that? Because that's that's probably Tanis has told me a number of times that's why she wanted to marry me in the first place, because I had these ridiculous deep discussions with her before we got married. But
And
I
so you
thought,
had
how
lots of
else do you
understand.
have?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
had lots of shared understanding before you tied the knot, Andrew.
that's right. She shared in my vision of what I wanted to create in terms of a family and a farm, and she thought she was excited by it. And
Mm.
the deepest or the darkest points, I think, for any marriage is when you lose that, you start going separate directions, in so many ways. Well, yeah, how did that happen? How
Well,
did
it's
that
called
happen?
isolation. That's called disconnection. That's called
Exactly.
not caring. That's not having marriage time for the cup of coffee an hour a week to talk about the
Yep.
state of your union. That's what that's
Yep.
called.
Exactly.
So
And it's
thank
effort.
you. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing and being with me today. It's great to hear your voice again. And
You too,
you and
Elaine.
I have shared lots of interesting farm family dynamics together in the work that we've done through mediation and conflict resolution. And folks, for all of you listening, you are not alone. You don't have to do these things alone. So I'd also like to direct you to the National Farmers Mental Health Alliance. Just Google National Farmers Mental Health Alliance, and you can find therapists all over Canada and North America and the US as well, who you might want to reach out to for some counseling, to do some work around the relationship conflict that you're experiencing. You can come to farmfamilycoach.com and sign up for a free discovery call with Lydia Carpenter, who's my business successor and partner, to look at what you might want to figure out for the next steps for you in a coaching approach. And to find Andrew, I'm going to just read out your phone number,
Sure.
204-825-7392. He will answer texts from his tractors, folks. I've tried this out before. And if you want to email Andrew, it's andrewd@goinet.ca. And Andrew, you're located in South Central Manitoba. You're willing to travel to the kitchen table where you get, I think, your best work done. Like you say, oh, can you bring me that file or can you tell me this? And then the farmer couple can retrieve things easily. And
Absolutely.
there's no pretense here, folks. Andrew's had a lot of conflict resolution training. He's mediated for many years. He's been farming for 25 years. So congratulations. It's your silver anniversary, Andrew. Did you know that?
I guess it is. Yeah.
I'll have to send you something silver for you and Tanis to celebrate that you've got rid of the cows and headed into the grain fields. But we all do farming differently, folks. And different is not wrong. It's just different. So please share this podcast far and wide. I know that some of you are concerned about your neighbors because I just heard from one of you yesterday from Alberta. Your neighbor's beside himself because he just can't figure out why things are falling apart. Wherever you are listening to this, make sure you share it with a friend. And if you want more coaching from us in a group situation in a really lively and lovely and respectful community, just go to farmfamilycoach.com/membership and check out our membership site, because the cart and the door is always open and we're ready to help walk alongside you. So Andrew, you go back and jump on your sprayer while the winds died down now after lunch. And folks, you'll be listening to this now in the middle of July. And so we hope that your crops are thriving, the hail is missing you, and that the fungicide is working, and that you all also have time to go camping or fishing this weekend to build those family relationships to build that family harmony and to put those accounts into what Andrew calls a trust account, so that you are going to have a huge emotional bank account and be rich in relationship. Because at the end of the day, folks, you're not taking that new truck or that new barn or that fancy piece of equipment with you when you go. And what do you truly want? And I want to be rich in relationships. So keep working towards that. And thanks for joining us at Farm Family Harmony. We'll see you next time. Bye for now. What's happening on your farm or in your farm advisor office? And what could I do to shift this? Because things are stuck and I'm not where I thought I'd be when I'm 45, 55, 65, or 75. What I'm talking to you about is our membership site called the Farm Family Transition Membership. We've been doing it now for 2.5 years. If you're looking for weekly coaching encouragement, the practical tools that our team, Farm Family Coach, is known for, and the opportunity to know that you're not alone. So please consider signing up for the membership today. Try it out. We've now opened the doors any time of year because we know your lives have seasons and changes. Give it an experiment. Just try it out. Because our actual billable rate for one-to-one coaching, which we still do, is twice what you have to pay to be part of a membership where you get coaching 3 times a month. Why not now? Click the link.